Baseball. The one sport shoved down our throats when football, hockey, and basketball are in the off-season. At least we got soccer this year. Which brings a good question for the sports fan in me. What are good baseball games that are usually played around this time? And it always brings me back to a game series that has been going on for over 30 years that just won't die. Backyard Baseball. The first Backyard Baseball game hit the shelves on October 10th, 1997. Over the next few years, Humongous turned one game into a franchise, adding soccer, football, and basketball titles at the property's peak popularity and placing atop the sales charts for all computer games, not just sports titles in the early 2000s. Cast against 2024's complex and greedy gaming landscape, Backyard Baseball may seem like a game that's past its prime. The original game is point and click, requiring only the left half of a computer mouse, and consists of only bright colors, sporting a palette of pinks and yellows, as the sun always shines. Even its buoyant background music evokes a stroll to the ball field on a sunny day. It'll be a little old-fashioned, composer Rhett Mathis says. I wanted to capture a little sense of the nostalgia of baseball, and that's why there's brush drums and finger snaps on an upright bass. It's kinda classic. The lasting cultural impact wasn't preordained, with the game coming from a studio new to sports creations and embodying neither the hyper-realistic trend of modern sports titles, nor the complete zaniness of classic arcade machines. The original wasn't a commercial success, and the franchise survived thanks only to conviction of an optimistic outlook from a studio head. And within a too-short period, the franchise peaked before its quality cratered, as later entries and expansions into consoles moved away from the loving qualities that helped make the first games pop. Those initial titles were simple, accessible, and incredibly fun. And 2 decades later, fans upheld them as a cult phenomenon. Mirkovich is an illustrator and animator by trades and a sports-obsessive gamer by blood. As an oldest of 5 boys, he grew up playing all manner of literal backyard sports, as well as sports games in arcades, and while spending part of his childhood on a military base in Korea, he came to see sports as an interpersonal connection that drew together kids of various backgrounds. Similar to the game itself, the underlying motive behind Backyard Baseball's creation was simple. Quote, "That's a thing, kids playing sports," Mirkovich remembers thinking. "I've seen movies about it, so it's gotta be a genre. Why isn't there a game in that genre?" Youth sports movies have experienced a renaissance in the early 90s, including The Sandlot, Rookie of the Year, and Little Big League. Though Mirkovich's greatest influence was an older film, his initial idea remembered a storyline from the 1976 film Bad News Bears, and it would involve controlling a team of characters from the neighborhood over a full season and thereby traversing a pre-planned, antics-filled journey. Mirkovich consulted with others at the company to sharpen his idea before formally pitching it, and it shifted to the typical sports game structure, with options for single game and season play, and a more concentrated focus on the actual baseball. Even though the updated idea moved away from Humongous' standard slate of adventure stories with an educational goal, it still catered to the same young audience the studio targeted with its Freddy Fish and Pajama Sam franchises. Humongous had never made a sports game before, and Mirkovich said that for at least 6 months, maybe a year, his pitch proposal sat undeveloped on studio co-founder Ron Gilbert's desk. Then the Seattle Mariners started winning. Humongous was headquartered in Woodville, Washington, about half an hour northeast from the Old Kingdom. And as the Mariners surged in 1995 to reach their first postseason, baseball fever infected the office. It wasn't just the local team that was winning. The Mariner bandwagon was a fun ride too, with stars like Ken Griffey Jr., Randy Johnson, and Edgar Martinez sparking interest in the club. Suddenly, Mirkovich said a baseball project seemed an appealing idea, and one day he showed up for work to hear Gilbert announce, "You know what? I think we want to make this a baseball game." 3 men were in charge of innovating for the company's first sports game. Richard Moe, a programmer who admits he was more of a Dungeons and Dragons guy than a sports person. Mark Peiser, a graphics designer and a self-described sports outsider. And Mirkovich, who shared an office with his 2 coworkers and supplied the game's athletic expertise. Their overarching goals were twofold: keep the gameplay realistic, or at least realistic as a game depicting 7-year-olds launching 400-foot home runs could be, and insert as much whimsy as possible. For the former goal, both team twisted the keep it simple stupid motto into keep it simple and sophisticated stupid. Quote, "We could have easily taken shortcuts and made, the result of a hit be a random number and go to a random predefined position. But we didn't want to shortchange the experience because we wanted to make this feel like a real simulation." The equations were all standard baseball fare though, as the programming team had to simulate fantastical elements on a baseball field too. The most obvious are the power-ups, inspired by those in Mario Kart, which Mirkovich calls a game changer in terms of amplifying the title kid friendliness. By completing in-game achievements like turning a double play, players could earn a special single-use bonus, such as an unhittable fireball or an automatic home run swing, called the Aluminum Power Bat. Peiser, the Mario player who sparked this feature, says that discarded ideas for additional power-ups included the opportunity to swing a tennis racket and the placement of a target in the outfield, like a garbage can, that would be worth 10 runs when hit. The baseline setup also required tinkering to accommodate other backyard quirks, like the variety of field surfaces, cement, dirt, grass, and more, which gave gameplay the extra half twist it needed to separate from the standard electronic baseball experience. Cement Gardens reimagined a child's accessories as bases, a used pizza box from home, a frisbee for first, while the sandy flats surface slowed kids' foot speed, and Tin Can Alley's massive outfield walls, molded out of a cityscape, suppress home runs and turn each game into a small ball experiment. Even the game's fields possess a personality, but its greatest draw were the personalities belonging to its cast. Humongous' first partnership with a professional league had come in the inaugural edition of Backyard Football in 1999, which included 8 pro players. But for its second baseball title, the studio expanded its ambitions and added one from every MLB team to widen the game's national appeal. The only exception was the Cincinnati Reds, who were honored with 2 players, Barry Larkin and Ken Griffey Jr. After the latter was traded from the Mariners as a development team was finishing the game, I don't think any of us would have stomached to leave him out, animator Hawley says. We're already losing him, right? To the Reds. Professional leagues were excited to work with a company whose audience skewed so young, and future backyard games also featured pros from the MLS, NBA, and NHL. We had such a unique relationship because no one else was doing what we were doing, Pagani says. We were the only voice to the young kids from those major leagues. For the 2001 baseball game, the negotiations with MLB and the MLB Players Association were painless. It was a great game. It was fantastic, remembers John Olshan, who oversaw the MLBPA's licensing agreements from 1999 to 2007. The MLBPA liked that Humongous' 2 chief priorities were simulating realistic football action and highlighting each player it designed. What our research showed is that fans want to engage with the players, Olshan says. If you promote the players as well as the league, that increases fan connection. Backyard put a lot of personality into the MLB players. Many of the pros were obvious selections. Derek Jeter got the nod for the Yankees, Randy Johnson for the Diamondbacks, and cover athlete Cal Ripken Jr. for the Orioles. For other teams though, the choices weren't as easy. Lacking a true standout, the Twins were represented by outfielder Marty Cordova, who had just hit 14 homers in the height of the steroid era in 1999 and never made an All-Star team, and was selected only as a well-rounded complement to the sluggers who were locked to appear in the game. The MLBPA didn't object to any of these picks. They had a really good taste in the players they chose, Olshan says. They chose guys who were wholesome and kind of represented the game in a great way at the time. For some of the pros, at the time, is the operative phrase. After the player selection came the design and animation phase, during which the Humongous artists enjoyed more creative freedom than their counterparts at traditional sports game studios. Quote, if you were designing the characters for Madden, you'd have to pretty much take a look at the way they do in real life, artist Tom Veer says. With the backyard game though, it was all about taking something that was identifiable about the major league players and just bringing it into the backyard baseball style. That meant emphasizing the gap in Ken Griffey Jr.'s front teeth, Randy Johnson's beanstalk legs, and Nomar Garciaparra's lengthy pre-pitch routine. It also meant ensuring that the characters looked like smaller versions of their adult selves, rather than just how they looked as kids. Quote, I had pictures of young Derek Jeter wearing full baseball gear, taking swings, and then when I drew that out real-life version, no one recognized him, Veer says. Difficulties arose when players didn't exhibit a particularly identifiable trait. Quote, I think Sean Green was the one I had the most trouble with because he was sort of this guy, Veer says. Even though they could experiment more with designers at other studios, they still had the creative, realistic depictions of those players. Quote, with backyard baseball kids, you just have to be goofy with them, Michael Barron said. When Dante Robinson swings the bat, he spins 360 before he stops. That kind of animation wasn't feasible with, say, Cordova or Green, who already had established, if stayed, mannerisms. On that level, it's a surprise that Baseball 2001 exists at all. None of the 1997 games developers remembered the original game selling particularly well at first. A 1998 New York Times profile of Shelley Day, Gilbert's other half atop the Humongous hierarchy, didn't reference the Backyard series at all. Mathis remembers attending a meeting after the first game and coming out with the studio hires were concerned about the lack of performance of backyard baseball and whether we should really make a second sports title, he says. And I remember Ron Gilbert going, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not going to give up until we have at least 3 of these out there. I still kind of look back at that and marvel because I don't know why Ron believed that, but he did, and that's what did it. The series impressed us in the industry by succeeding not only as a kids game, but as a sports title. Amid a crowded market for gamers' attentions, Humongous received a Kids' Choice Awards nomination in 2002, and representatives of the professional leagues raved about the partnership. There were some games that we licensed at the time that looked phenomenal but were cold, and Baseball 2001 wasn't. Quote, it was fun. Just what I really liked about it was the feedback that we got on it. Kids loved it. I talked to people who were like, oh yeah, this is my introduction to baseball. Olshan adds that the game's biggest fan was Alex Rodriguez, who, in addition to particularly inspiring Pablo, appeared as the Mariner representative in 2001. In the mid-2000s, Rodriguez appeared on the cover of a console edition of the game, and at the next season's All-Star game, Olsen asked the MVP if he needed any briefing on the game before a press event. Quote, and he just looked at me and he starts reeling off facts about it. I was impressed. One of the biggest stars of the game just off the tip of his tongue knew so much about this product. Nearly every creator interviewed for the story shared an anecdote about younger present-day acquaintances expressing enthusiasm upon learning that they worked on the Backyard games. The magic of the Backyard cast would have veered towards the blandness of other sports games lineups. Quote, when you focus test, my opinion is that you tend to find the lowest common denominator. There are plenty of other sports games that were characters or players that had no personality. We didn't want that. We wanted personality. Still, he finds the game's retrospective fandom a surprise. I don't remember thinking it was a big hit, Mo says. I certainly didn't anticipate that I would get the critical acclaim that has gotten all this nostalgia coming back 20 years later. The charm of Backyard Baseball lies in its simplicity and accessibility. The controls are easy to pick up, making it perfect for players of all ages. But don't let that fool you. There's a surprising depth to the gameplay, from selecting your lineup to having to decide on the perfect pitch. Backyard Baseball manages to capture the strategic elements of the sport in a way that's fun and engaging. For many, Backyard Baseball is more than just a game. It's a cultural touchstone, a symbol of childhood summers spent in front of a screen with friends and family. The series began in 1997, and its colorful graphics, catchy music, and relatable characters made it an instant hit. It was a game that didn't take itself too seriously, but still offered a satisfying baseball experience. Over the years, Backyard Baseball has evolved, but its core appeal has remained the same. Whether you're playing the original 1997 version or one of the later installments, the game continues to deliver a fun, nostalgic experience. The fan community around Backyard Baseball is still active, sharing memories, strategies, and even modding the game to keep it fresh and exciting. You also have a ton of content creators across TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube still posting about the game series to this day. This includes people like Squidlegs, Not the Expert, Papa Meat, and Therm, just to name a few, showing that over 20 years later, the game has a significant impact on its community, whether that be the quality of the game, the silliness of it, or pure nostalgia. So why does Backyard Baseball still resonate with so many of us? It's a combination of nostalgia, community, and timeless gameplay. It's a game that reminds us of the joy of playing for the love of the sport, without the complexities of modern gaming. And in a world where everything is changing, it's nice to have something familiar to come back to. The reason I wanted to make this video was purely for the fact that Backyard Baseball has been popping up on my feed more often than not. And I believe it's purely for the fact that since baseball season is around, people always come back to this game. It's been a yearly thing where the gaming community who loves sports go over to this game because it is, in my opinion, the greatest baseball game to ever grace the face of the earth. I'm serious when I say that. When it comes to baseball video games, this has to be the GOAT. And then the content creators, you had Therm, Not the Expert, Squidlegs, Papa Meat. I looked everywhere and I kept finding Backyard Baseball stuff, and people are posting it to this day. And it shows the longevity of Backyard Baseball and how great of a game it is. And I've been really enjoying just watching streams of it and like wanting to get to play it myself. So it's really fun. But anyways, I just want to talk about why I believe Backyard Baseball is the greatest baseball game of all time. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell for future notifications. And also comment down below. If you played Backyard Baseball, how was it? I'm wanting to know different experiences because like every time I reach out to someone new about it, it's a new experience every time. So yeah, other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you guys later. Peace.